My friends, every single day someone comes to me and tells me that they have been unsubscribed from my channel without their knowledge. Please make certain that you are still subscribed, and if you have not subscribed, please do so in our ongoing fight to stop corporations from destroying our myths. We need your help. Thank you. I've decided to break my silence about Star Trek Picard so that Next Generation fans can brace themselves for the coming catastrophic destruction of everything they hold dear. If you're a fan of Next Generation in general and Patrick Stewart in particular, you need to be prepared for what a hideous, crushing disappointment you're about to witness, because Star Trek Picard is going to break your heart, as well as the Star Trek franchise. I haven't had much to say about Star Trek Picard lately, because I know for a fact that Star Trek Picard, or Star TP as I like to call it, is what EMTs call DOA, dead on arrival. This thing is so dead, if you shoved a meat thermometer up its ass, the thermometer itself would freeze in a solid sub-zero block of suck. And if it was a digital thermometer, it would abandon numbers altogether and just show a poop emoji. A sad, defeated poop emoji where the poop has just learned his wife has left him for a cow pie. Country boy, charming accent, smells earthy from working the land. But I digress. The point is, Star Trek Picard is a corpse. And in this video, I'm going to explain exactly why Star Trek Picard is not only going to suck harder than a human centipede named Dust Devil McHoover, but why Abrams' and Secret Hideout Star Trek experiment is a failure poised to utterly destroy the Star Trek brand forever. So let's get something out of the way straight off. Star Trek Picard has nothing to do with Star Trek The Next Generation, so get that right out of your head. By Kurtzman's own admission, an admission born out of desperate necessity, but we'll get to that in a moment, Star TP is not a sequel to Next Generation. Remember in Airplane, when the guy in the tower asks Robert Stack if they should turn on the landing field lights for the incoming emergency landing, and Stack says, no, that's just what they'd expect us to do. Well, picture Kurtzman and his Keystone comedy crap writers as Robert Stack. The reason why Star Trek Picard is not a sequel to The Next Generation is because that's just what fans would expect them to make. A sequel to Next Generation is the obvious thing to do because it's what everyone would want. Here's a tip for the CBS marketing department from the Doomcock School of Business. Make shit that the audience wants to see. No company ever got rich making what the hired help wanted to see. It doesn't matter what fools like Kurtzman or Goldsman or Chabon want to make. The only thing that matters is what the audience actually wants to see, you idiots. Who the fuck has been running things at CBS All Access all this time? What business genius modeled a business plan to sell viewers what Kurtzman wants them to want rather than what they actually want? And what programming genius hired a bunch of writers who don't know Star Trek, have no interest in Star Trek, and actually have a contempt for Star Trek bordering on outright hatred? Why the hell did you people think that would succeed with Star Trek fans? Or with anyone? Are you insane? Star Trek Picard hasn't released yet, and it's already a failure because, like Star Trek Discovery, Star Trek Picard isn't a sequel to Next Generation, it's a negation of everything Star Trek stood for. Star Trek was a bright, optimistic view of a nearly utopian future, a vision of humanity to inspire the ages, not an ugly, stupid, hateful, dark little shit of a show where everyone is either an undercover Klingork, a Section 31 spy, or an obnoxious pig who happens to be the bestest ever at everything. Welcome to Star Trek Discovery and Star Trek Picard, for they are one and the same. Don't believe me? In a recent article in Variety, in a belated and seemingly terrified attempt to spin their mind-blowing incompetence as Sir Patrick Stewart's doing, Kurtzman was interviewed, and the article flat out admitted that Star Trek Picard is not a sequel to The Next Generation. In fact, Variety, via Kurtzman, makes it plain that STP is nothing like TNG. In fact, Kurtzman makes it clear that the audience for this trash is nobody. Quote, On January 23rd, CBS All Access will debut Star Trek Picard, a series in which Stewart reprises the thoughtful, cultured, bald starship captain he played for 7 seasons on Star Trek The Next Generation and in a string of 4 feature films that ended in 2002. The new show is different from its predecessor in nearly every respect: texture, tone, format, production value, even the likelihood of characters dropping an F-bomb. That's all by design. Stewart's design. He is uninterested in repeating himself, says Alex Kurtzman, the show's creator and executive producer, and the mastermind behind CBS's effort to not just revive Star Trek, but also transform it into a vast narrative universe in the Marvel mold. Quote, "Everything he does is filled with innate integrity. He fights for the things he believes in, and he's very willing to collaborate once you're on the same wavelength." So let's be very, very clear. This is not an online rag. This is Variety. And this is a message sanctioned and conveyed straight from Kurtzman and the CBS marketing department. So this is not a rumor. This is an admission, a confession. Quote, "The new show is different from its predecessor in nearly every respect. Texture, tone, format, production value, even the likelihood of characters dropping an F-bomb." Well, if Star TP is different from The Next Generation in texture, meaning it looks nothing like The Next Generation, in tone, meaning it feels nothing like The Next Generation, so watching this thing isn't going to give Next Generation fans a warm, cuddly feeling inside, format, meaning the scripts won't resemble Next Generation scripts, production value, meaning they spend a lot of money on it, but since it won't resemble The Next Generation, they might as well have flushed that cash down a black hole. Given all those things, how exactly then is this show going to be like The Next Generation? It'll have Picard in it, you say? Right. And what does it say about the dignity and reserve of Picard if he's going to be dropping F-bombs? So much for the culture and dignity of humanity's future. So much for Roddenberry's vision of a utopian future. And just as Kurtzman always manages to do, Star TP violates Star Trek canon like Ned Beatty got violated in Deliverance. Under Kurtzman's able guidance, Star Trek squeals like a fucking piggy. But hey, it sure looks purty in them there lens flares. Case in point, in Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, Spock is mystified by the profanity of 20th century Earth, the colorful metaphors hurled by all us Earthers in San Francisco. Kirk indicates that this was a feature of the period, found in the works of literary giants like Jacqueline Suzanne. In other words, profanity was extinct in the future. So Picard and pals dropping F-bombs is yet another direct violation of established Star Trek canon and yet another ugly graffiti tag sprayed across Roddenberry's masterpiece. So by their own admission/confession, Star TP is not only not a sequel to The Next Generation, it resembles The Next Generation in no meaningful way. And who is to blame for this? Patrick Stewart, according to Variety, by way of Kurtzman. This was all by Stewart's design, the article says. Ah, well then, that makes it okay, right? That's the shoddy, sordid soap they're trying to sell us. This thing we've slapped the Star Trek name on isn't remotely like Star Trek, but it's okay, because it's not our fault. It was Patrick Stewart's fault. He made us do it. Like hell. Doesn't this smack of desperation, trying to justify this debacle that in no way resembles Star Trek by pinning it on Patrick Stewart? Like he's the patron saint of Star Trek, like he can descend and touch this and turn vinegar into piss and rebrand it lemonade. Basically, Patrick Stewart was all about turning Picard into an action star, which is why Insurrection and Nemesis both sucked so badly. Stewart is a great actor, but his writing ability and understanding of what makes for good Star Trek is legendarily bad. So pinning this on him is asinine, but regardless, all of this is a tacit admission that what you're about to see is not a sequel to The Next Generation, it is not Star Trek, and judging from the fact that Chabon was removed as showrunner from the show before it even got released is proof that Star Trek Picard is not even entertaining. Note the development history of Star TP as it has rumored and been reported by channels like Midnight's Edge. Kurtzman was responsible for the first 6 episodes of Star TP, until executives got a look at what he created and presumably recoiled in horror. Removing Kurtzman and scrambling in desperation to change course, hired Chabon to de-Kurtzmanize what had been shot. Rumors that I've heard indicate that Chabon failed to fix what Kurtzman had broken on Star TP. Rumors I believe now for 2 key reasons. I've seen how horrible Chabon's short treks have been. The man is incapable of writing Star Trek, even given the characters of Pike and Spock. So I cringe and pucker my nether regions, thinking of just how awful his take on Picard will be. But the main reason that I give these rumors credence at this point is Chabon was removed as showrunner for the hypothetical season 2 of Picard, even before a single episode of Picard has aired. Think about that. CBS had a hell of a time behind the scenes with Star TP. They had to delay production for a month, missing their 2019 deadline because licensees were demanding changes to the character and ship designs, changes that were rumored to have been made without satisfying licensees, who walked away saying they could not sell garbage designs based on Star Trek Discovery's perverted and mangled version of Star Trek because nobody wanted them. Then Star TP allegedly, according to rumor, was shown to test audiences who hated it. So they had to replace Kurtzman with Chabon, who was tasked with fixing Star TP in mid-production. That's when cameos by Troy and Riker were announced, finally. And they were desperately brought in at the last minute to con audiences into believing that, hey, no worries, we're putting the band back together. And they're not. Those are cameos only, but I'll get to that in a minute. So you're telling me that in all that tumult, Sturm und Drang, that CBS was going to fire Chabon as showrunner if he had succeeded? They have had such a hard time with Star TP, gone through so much in the production development. If they found a guy who could bring home the space bacon, you're telling me they wouldn't cling to him for dear life? The fact that Chabon has been shuffled off of season 2 of Star TP and onto another project should tell you that Chabon did not succeed, that Star TP is going to be awful, and you should prepare yourself for one thing: pain. But what about Riker and Troy? We saw them in the trailer. That's the next generation, right? Sure. Too bad they're just cameos tacked onto the corpse. They were announced to be in the cast only after Kurtzman was replaced by Chabon. By that time, they had shot and largely completed around 6 episodes and the scripts were written. So you tell me how, if Riker and Troy were added at the last minute in desperation so that they could be included in the San Diego Comic-Con trailer screening to excite fans, how can these characters be important to the story? How can they be central to Star Trek Picard? They're clearly not going on this mission with Picard. Nope, they just appear in the opening episode to bid him a fond farewell as he departs with his ragtag crew of attractive young models who work a lot cheaper than the next generation cast. Sounds absolutely thrilling, yes? So I ask you, how can Riker and Troy be an important part of Star TP when no one knew they were going to even be in it until midway through production? Answer: they can't. They're not central to the story, they're tacked on. To quote a certain Romulan commander, it's a fake. So what article triggered my desire to set the record straight on what is really going on here? The shilling, my friends. The stupid, insulting shilling planted on sci-fi.com, an article that reads, "The moment when Picard became more important than Kirk in Star Trek history." Quote, "Who is the most popular Star Trek captain of all time? This age-old and extremely fraught Trekkie debate has arguably been settled. The impending release of Star Trek Picard seems to prove that overwhelmingly, fans love Captain Jean-Luc Picard more than any other Trek captain ever. Yes, hardcore Trekkies will tell you they celebrate all captains equally, even Scott Bakula, but the zeitgeist seems to tell a different story. We love Picard a lot, and surely we love him more than Captain James T. Kirk. This wasn't always the case, but we've been living in a Picard-first world for a long time now. The rest of this article is as logically flawed and poorly reasoned as this opening, so I'll just take a moment to debunk this garbage. The impending release of Star Trek Picard seems to prove that overwhelmingly fans love Captain Jean-Luc Picard more than any other Trek captain ever. To the writer of this article, there's nothing more pathetic than a showbiz writer who doesn't understand showbiz. The fact that Picard is being featured in his own show is because Patrick Stewart was available and they could make the deal. And it hit the marketing desires of the marketing department, and that's it. And there's one thing that Kurtzman and Secret Hideout have consistently proven, it's that they don't give a damn what fans want. Fans didn't want Mikey Spock, didn't want Spock to have a human sister, didn't ask for Spock to be dyslexic and emotionally disturbed, didn't ask for Klingons to be swapped with orcs from Lord of the Rings, didn't ask for canon to be perverted, didn't ask for cheap, ugly effects in a cheap, ugly universe that's a parody of Star Trek. We just wanted some Star Trek. And they didn't give it to us, and they wear it as a badge of honor that they steadfastly continue to refuse giving it to us. So basically, Siffy, Kurtzman's decision to make a Picard series has nothing to do with fan choice and everything to do with availability, expedience, and the desire to do to Star Trek Next Generation what Kurtzman did to the original series. Degrade it to the point of destruction. That destruction begins in a few weeks, and nobody cares. Nobody's talking about Star Trek Picard. Nobody gives a shit. The well is poisoned, and the sooner Miss Redstone gets rid of the current creative team behind this debacle, the better. I don't know if Star Trek can be saved at this point, but I do know it can't be saved with garbage like this. Without respect for your loyal fans and your customers, no show can survive, or deserves to. From the center of the earth, this is Dictor Van Doomcock bidding you all, my friends, stay angry.